Okay.
Oh no, I'm gonna sneeze. Why do you have a bunch of tissues?
In case somebody needs to sneeze.
It went away. It might come back.
That's what moms have, tissues.
Okay. Well, today we're talking about toxic masculinity. If you couldn't tell from the title. And I had her on just because last week I liked it, so I just learned that I prefer doing it with other people.
Any old person will do.
Don't interpret it that way. Find a way to take offense to a compliment.
Calling me old now, huh? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's get serious.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, this is kind of a serious topic, I guess, but it's, I don't know. I don't like to make my videos political in the sense where I'm preaching an opinion really aggressively. I try more to share a newer perspective with new information, and I have a lot of stuff that I'm learning in the week, and then I just apply that to the topic. So this video is about stuff that I've learned in the past couple days. Not necessarily learned, but just stuff that I've been thinking about. Some stuff that I learned, but for the most part, it's just stuff that I was thinking about. So
it's a good timing.
Yeah.
Because what just came in the mail?
What?
A movie that you wished was a Blu-ray, but I accidentally ordered the DVD version.
Promising Young Woman. If you haven't seen that movie, it's out. It just came out to buy and own, and it was out for a couple months, but you could only rent it. I don't want to tell you too much about it, but it's really good, and it's kind of about what we're talking about today. So yeah, my mom just went and ordered it, and she got the DVD instead of the Blu-ray, and I was like, why? But when I asked her, she said, I don't know what I ordered. And I said, how do you not know what you had? Like, I just don't understand not paying attention to things like that. That's why I get a little bit, when it comes to things like this, I try to involve myself because it makes a difference to me, and I also seem to be the only one who actually pays attention to the details of it. Mm-hmm. But she did it behind my back. Mm-hmm. Right when I brought up we should go to Target and pick up the Blu-ray, and she was like, oh, I already ordered the DVD online. I was like, why? But anyway, that's kind of like
easy and
not
cheap.
Really important.
No, but it's kind of got to do with this topic.
It does.
The movie.
Yeah.
Any version.
I mean, honestly, even me not being happy about the version she got is still related to the topic today, because we're talking about letting go of control. So that's in chapter 2. Chapter 1 is called The Human Invention. And the first thing I have written here is that we come up with a lot of dumb ideas, but superiority is the most destructive. And what that basically means is that there are a lot of things that we think of that are... Oh, hi, Derek.
Oh,
Derek's
hi.
watching. I was like, who said that? Okay, so yeah, we come up with a lot of ideas, but superiority is the most destructive. People don't realize how many things are human inventions. A lot of people talk about certain concepts as if they're just real, and just to name a few, rights, those are imaginary. Superiority, that's an illusion. Gender is not made up. Gender is in everything, but the idea that certain genders have to be one thing, that's an illusion, because gender is literally in everything. It's even in like fruits and vegetables. Even different sides of your body have different genders. Like the left side is female and the right side is male or something like that. I might have gotten them mixed up, but it's like, it's literally in everything. And you're supposed to be able to, to be everything, a balanced amount of the qualities that each side represents. But we just made up different things that each side is supposed to represent, and different cultures have different ideas of what that means. So in American culture, we have some ideas of what masculinity and femininity are, and it's just made up. It's just an invention. And the problem with that is what I'm going to be talking about in chapter 2 is how that affects us. So the other things I've written here, most things we think are real are actually made up, including identities. That's another thing. Identities are also an illusion because you think of like when somebody is authentically being themselves. What they're doing is they're not thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about me, because what reason is there to think about that apart from survival and trying to achieve comfort or things for yourself? It's okay to want healing and prosperity, but when you're really thinking about yourself, it's coming from a place of survival. So it's not really necessarily you. So you don't really exist. It's just all part of the same thing. So identity is also an illusion. That's a little bit of a more complex idea, but I've talked about it in other videos, I think. So if you need more elaboration on that, go watch my other stuff. But so the last thing that I have written is the thing that I learned the other day about kind of like a healing hierarchy in the universe, where it's like at the top are angels, and then underneath that would be spirit guides, and then like at the very top would be God energy. But it's just a metaphor, but it's not a metaphor, but it's the way that I'm using it is like the angels don't really have a strong sense of identity. They don't have names. We give them names. I just watched a video learning about angels and guides, which is where this came from. I watched it 2 days ago, which is when I came up with the idea for this video. You may think that I would have come up with my idea for the next video like a week ago, but sometimes it's really like last minute. Like I think I'm going to talk about this in 2 days. So sometimes I just jumble stuff together without any preparation, but I have a video prepared and I know what I want to say. So that's the closest thing there is to superiority, but it's not really about what's better or worse. It's just, the different levels of healing, and that's all. That's what it's based on. It's a hierarchy, but it's all based on healing and what can bring the most healing. So if you ever get an idea in your head that there's something more important than healing, I don't know, look inward and say, where is that idea coming from? It's really all you can do. Chapter 2 is called the Misunderstandings, and this is what I mentioned when we say that we come up with dumb ideas, because the problem is that we grow up and we hear these ideas and we're kind of forced to believe them because we're hearing them from people that we have to depend on to take care of us. We talked about that last week in the parenting video. And when people that you're supposed to be trusting and listening to take care of you are telling you things that are not helpful, it's just gonna be a problem. You just end up believing it and living as if it's true. Do you have anything you want to add?
Nope, not yet.
So the idea that pleasing others is crucial for survival will ironically be our extinction. That's really unfortunate, but it's definitely true, because when we keep thinking that we have to please other people, we have to stay in line and listen to order, and as if you're like standing in a military and you got some angry guy yelling at you, silence your phone.
Sorry. Okay. There.
Yeah. Okay. So you got some angry guy yelling at you, telling you what's what, trying to get you in line, trying to get you in shape and make sure that you're disciplined. Discipline is a good thing, but it doesn't mean what a lot of people think it means. There are a lot of really good concepts that people twist around and misuse them, and then they hear these things and they're like, no, because people, unconditional love, for example.
Derek.
For example, unconditional love people associate with lack of boundaries. People hear unconditional love and they immediately think that's not a good thing because it means you're being taken advantage of, or you're not having appropriate boundaries and taking care of yourself. And that's not what it means at all. There's other things like discipline, which I think discipline is the highest form of self-love, because when you are disciplined, in your life. It shows that you care about yourself enough to take care of yourself instead of just, feed your instant gratification and try to just give yourself what you initially want, which might not always be good for you in the long term.
You know what it means? The definition of discipline?
What?
It means to teach. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. I was just gonna grab my phone out from my pocket and look up the actual direct definition, but
Yeah.
that's my phone.
So to teach, to learn how to behave or how you want to be as a person. That's a way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think we see it that way in our culture. It just means to behave, to do as you're told, regardless of if you have a question about it.
Yeah. And you really don't need validation. It's always better to get comfortable in discomfort and being misunderstood, because when you're trying so hard to be comfortable all the time, you're denying reality. You're living in an illusion, because life is uncomfortable. That's a fact. There's going to be a lot of uncomfortable moments. And if you're constantly seeking external comfort, you're never going to get what you're after. You're going to constantly be dissatisfied. And you're replacing that with an attitude of gratitude. You're supposed to replace the idea that you always need more with being grateful for what you have. You should be grateful for so many things, not little things. I mean, yes, little things too, but I mean the idea that you're part of the universe, that you have a whole support team working with you and trying to assist you in life, and grateful for the life that you have, for the air that you breathe, for whatever your circumstances are. There's always something to be grateful for. And when you wake up grateful, you wake up excited that you have all the things that you have, or you can wake up miserable about all the things you don't have. It's up to you. And that's really all it comes down to at the end of the day. But we really have to let go of this idea that we need validation. And this, again, is connected to the things that we hear from our parents and teachers and, adult mentors in our life that we kind of have to depend on in one way or another. So we have to trust them. We have to hear what they say, and what they say sticks with us, even if it's not true. And the problem is that they often tell you the wrong thing because they're afraid of you. They're afraid that you are authentic and you seem pretty okay, and that makes them uncomfortable because they have other stuff that they need to deal with, and they're annoyed that they were told to behave a certain way, so they tell you to behave that way, and it's not good for you.
Intrinsic jealousy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your light is shining so bright that it burns their eyes, and instead of just continuing to shine and saying, turn around if you don't like it, or trying to help them to shine with you, you start dimming your own light, and that's what they want, because they want to bring you down to where they're stuck. And that's really not okay, but so many people do it subconsciously. They don't know they're doing it. Some of them are, the terrifying ones are aware that they're doing it, but most people I don't think are aware of that. They just, it's like a child. Like a child will go over and hit you when you take their toy because they don't know any better. And they don't know that what they're doing is wrong. They're just like, hey, you took something and I was playing with it and now I'm mad, so I'm gonna hit you. And it's just the way that they think. And it's kind of like that, like they're stuck in that childish mentality. The difference between childish and childlike is that childish is usually not a good thing. It's that you're acting immature. You're supposed to have evolved beyond that immaturity. But childlike basically means having a childlike curiosity about the world, a childlike honesty, and just in general, a childlike essence. And that's going to piss a lot of people off who don't have that, people who lost sight of that because they let fear take control of their decisions. And, when you feel like you need to control what is around you, the circumstances, the people, whatever it is, if you feel like the circumstances around you are not in control and you need to control them, you may feel like that will make you more powerful, but all that actually means is that you're afraid of the power of the things that were around you. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't feel like you needed to control it. You could trust it, but you're afraid of it because you don't trust it and you think it's more powerful than you. So you have to lie to yourself and try to assert your own power. And what you're really doing when you try to be a controlling person is you're letting other people know that they're inferior to you and their way is the wrong way. And that's going to make them feel really awkward and uncomfortable around you. And you're going to be alienating people that would have wanted to be near you more often. and they're not going to want to be near someone who makes them feel like there's something wrong with them, because their way is always wrong and your way is always right. So you don't want to alienate people. You also don't want to take the other approach, which is thinking that life is just a chaos, it's just a tornado, and you're just stuck in the tornado and you're a victim of everything. Because then you're also going to be pushing people away and isolating yourself by acting like you're always a victim and nobody's help will ever be enough. So people who want to help you, you're not actually allowing them to do anything, because you have to do the work. No one's coming to save you. This isn't a movie where you're the princess in the castle and you have a knight in shining armor coming to rescue you. You have to be Rapunzel and let your hair down and climb out of the tower yourself, because that's reality.
But
you know, there's
can
only
have
so much somebody else
compassion for
can do.
yourself if you do this type of practice, little by little, have gained your self-awareness. I think that's part of the problem, is that it's hard to stop and go, whoa, why did I just have that thought where I was like, ooh, why are you so happy? Why am I not happy? I want that. I'm mad. I'm going to do something to make you not happy and be down in my little pit with me, because it's not fair that you have happiness. I've caught myself in those kind of thoughts. But that's where you could turn your car around. You could put on your brakes and take a second and say, whoa, where's that thought coming from? Don't act upon it, and self-reflect a little bit. And then little by little, you'll start behaving differently, and maybe other people in your life will pick up on that, and they might start behaving differently, and it will just cascade and hopefully catch on little by little with your group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not impossible if you just don't judge yourself for having those kind of thoughts either. It's hard to say, oh, well, I'm human, of course I have those thoughts. It's okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
self-judgment is a big issue, because that's, again, this is what it's coming from, is these ideas that we made up, that we teach the young people, and we say, this is how you have to be and this is how you ought to be. These are the rules.
Right and wrong.
Stay in line. Right and wrong. Where do right and wrong come from? For the most part, we make it up. But as I continue to learn for the past 4 or 5 years, the one consistency is love and fear. That's the only thing that hasn't changed. I constantly learn things, and I'm constantly changing my ideas and thinking, wow, I'm glad I know this now that I had no idea before, and I'm constantly evolving and learning more. But I never learn anything that contradicts, that everything comes back to love and fear at the end of the day. That's it. That's all that's real. And there's so many things you can learn in life, so many twists and turns you can take about questioning what's going on, what is anything, what's real, what religion is true, whatever it is you're thinking. But if you have love and fear at the core, using that as sort of a morality scale and trying to question which of the two you're coming from in any given moment, then that's really all that you can rely on. That'll always be there no matter what goes away, no matter what you learn that contradicts something else you believed. That will always be there, and you'll never find any information that contradicts it, because it's
like
just a
getting
fact.
a good pair of glasses. Suddenly your perception will be a little more crisp and clear.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting when you learn how many things can just be traced right back to fear. Like the idea of needing to control other people is because you fear their power. And, so many things that we think are like ego and, identity, these things that I said are an illusion. It's because the only time that you think about yourself is when you're afraid that you're not going to be alive or in pain. You think about yourself when you want to avoid pain, discomfort, or death. And all other fears can be traced back to those things. You're afraid of spiders because they make you uncomfortable, or you think that they might make you in pain if they bite you, or they think that they might kill you. You know what I mean? Like all your fears can be traced back to pain, discomfort, or death. And that's because those are the 3 things that we are desperately trying to avoid. But we need to replace that fear with trust that we're not going to die unless we're supposed to. Because death is around every corner. You could just slip and fall in the shower. You don't know when you're going to die. You can't avoid it by being afraid of everything that might kill you. You have to calm down and learn to listen to your intuition. And in order to do that, you have to have faith that everything is going to be okay, that you can trust a higher power and a system in the universe. And once you start working with that system, working with it is how you survive and avoid pain, because you learn to look inward and find that within yourself. You listen to your intuition when it says, steer out of traffic in this lane, and then there's an accident in that lane. And you wouldn't have known that logically. You wouldn't have known that if you were afraid and without faith and tuning out your intuition. but your intuition is how you live and how you save your life and how you actually live the way that you're meant to. Because if you're afraid, you don't know where you're going. You're directionless. You're just like, I don't know. I just don't want to die. I'm going in this way. I'm going that way. It's
Almost a
just,
girl in my human interactions class compared this kind of like being run by your limbic brain, like the inner brain of fear, danger, danger. You have an alarm system going off in your head, and she made a good point about how if you have to pee really, really badly, it's hard for you to make prefrontal cortex decisions and think about things rationally. You just will do whatever comes easiest at that time because something more physical is happening within you, something more primitive that you don't have control over. Your body needs to urinate.
I gotta empty
you
my
know?
bladder, man. I don't know what to tell you. Just get out of the bathroom. I'm going right now.
It takes priority because that's your survival. Your bladder will explode. Something bad will happen, and so you know this. Your body's telling you, do these other things. Just get through this moment. That's what's tricky about when you don't realize that you're in a state of fear. Sometimes you don't realize it till later after you've already screwed up a situation.
And that's where the discipline comes in. Just self-awareness, stopping and saying, hold on, is this actually logical or is this reactionary?
Right, and even if you look at it later on, if you don't have
Yeah.
to, you can make mistakes in a social situation.
That's the best way to learn, though. I think when you look back and you're like, well, how do I tell the difference if I'm coming from a place of love or fear? Look back at your past decisions and then see how they turned out. That's all you have to do. Look back and say, here's a big decision that I made and here's how it turned out. And then you can see, which place it was coming from. And just think about your intentions. What were you trying to gain from that? Was it coming from a place of trying to, survive or secure your own happiness and self just whatever? Or was it coming from a place of trying to, bring healing and light and positivity to
right.
what's around you?
I think it's better to do it afterwards because then your next interaction, you will have learned from dissecting that other interaction that didn't go so well. But if you skip over that, which a lot of us do because it's scary to look back, it's like, I'd rather just forget that. That was a horrible thing that just happened. I don't want to think about that. That was embarrassing. I don't want to go over that again in my mind. What's the point of that? Because then next time you'll learn and you'll say, I remember last time this is why I behaved that way. So now I'm going to have the forethought before I act and say, wait a minute, maybe I'm doing the same thing, and you won't repeat the same mistakes.
Yeah. I want to move on to chapter 3 now, which is called the Patriarchy. And this one is more based on the title of the video because I wanted to lead into this by talking more about where all this stuff comes from. And then I want to talk more about in detail of what exactly it is. So the first thing that I've written under here is that men can't be shamelessly authentic because of toxic masculinity. And that's the big misconception, is that a lot of people think toxic masculinity is that masculinity is toxic. It's not what it is. Nobody's saying that there's something wrong with being masculine. Nobody's trying to discourage masculinity and encourage femininity. That's not even what feminism is. Feminism is about equality and balance, and toxic masculinity is about fear and control and ego. And it's all of that I have to pee, I don't want to think kind of mentality. And we tell people all these toxic things. Boys will be boys. And there's this line in a song, it's called Boys Will Be Boys by Dua Lipa, or whoever, however her name is pronounced. I think Dua Lipa sounds right. I don't know if it's Dua Lipa or whatever. That doesn't sound right. The line in the song is, boys will be boys, but girls will be women. Basically, that you have to change yourself to be safe. You have to change the way you think, the way you act, the way you are around other people in order to survive. And you're teaching people not to be authentic because we're living in a world where people will attack you for it. And I experienced this a lot in my childhood. I had tons of people telling me weird. I had in school, it happened a couple times where my mom would get phone calls that I was hugging other students. I remember that was in second grade.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I remember. I would just randomly turn around and hug people because I told you because they're warm and squishy.
Yes, when I asked, so why are you doing that? Because they're warm and squishy.
I just wanted to hug people just for the sake of hugging. And there was no fear motive behind it. I just felt like hugging people. I used to like skip to the water fountain and just be really happy all the time. And I would dress kind of weird, like I would wear Crocs with socks on and just like I don't know, wear
You're a
clothes and
kid.
like just dress like fun. But I had my dad telling me I looked like a clown for dressing like that and calling me a spaz and other things. I had teachers calling my mom saying he skips to the water fountain and he hugs students, he's going to get bullied. And all of these adults in my life
Yes,
trying to
and
protect me from getting bullied by
that
other
you stop
students
and think
instead
before you
of
answer a question.
doing something
I
about the
found,
bullying.
yeah,
I never got bullied by
didn't
other
work.
students. That didn't happen, which is really interesting that I don't have any memory of anybody attacking. I definitely never got in a physical fight. And I maybe had a couple people think that I was funny, but I was trying to be. I never had anybody bully me. I never felt attacked by other students. It was the teachers who were trying to protect me from that kind of behavior that ended up scaring me into submission and making me feel like I have to be a certain way. So I stopped being myself. And I didn't even realize it until more recently, where I was like, how many of my decisions are coming from the things that I was told by those people in my life? It's not even me anymore. And it applies to the patriarchy too, where we have to stop telling women not to dress a certain way because they're going to get raped if they wear a shirt that's a skirt that short,
Yep.
a skirt that short. Why can't I talk
Yes.
today?
And that woman shouldn't
And
have
it's
been
like-
out after 10 o'clock at night on the
Yeah,
road.
carry your keys
What does
between
she
your knuckles
expect?
just in case. Carry pepper spray. You got to protect yourself because men are animals and they can't be controlled. And that's the other thing that we are told is that boys will be boys. They're going to be animals. They're not going to be able to control themselves, so you have to work around it. Boys will be boys, girls will be women. That's not fair. That is so messed up for so many levels, and it hurts both sides because the men are being prevented from being their authentic selves, from learning who they really are. And just like me, they're coming from a place of fear. They're being what they're expected to be instead of who they actually are. And they don't even know who they actually are because ever since they were born, they were told what they're supposed to like and how they're supposed to be. And they're told that this is another big issue is that they're afraid people are gonna think that they're gay. And that's another thing that I see that is really toxic is people saying, does that make me gay? And no way, that's gay. And this is another thing George Carlin pointed out is like people who are so afraid of seeming gay that it'll be a bunch of guys hanging out, drinking and talking, and they'll be like, "Hey man, I love you guys, but not in a gay way. Actually, I'm so straight that let's go out and kill some gay people." And then that's like the mentality of how it gets there, and they're like so afraid to seem feminine in any way. But you don't realize that you're supposed to be everything, and you're not supposed to think about it as, is this masculine or is this feminine? Is this right or is this wrong? We're told to associate
They're
these
put in
words, right and
opposition
wrong,
against each other.
with things. You're supposed to be everything, and people are
Combine them.
terrified of this. People don't want to seem like they might not be as masculine as they're supposed to be, and that's not good for them. That's preventing them from being authentic. There are plenty of people who actually are gay, but who have repressed it so much that they're not able to even acknowledge that as a part of themselves, and they can die without ever coming out to themselves, and they can come out at a very late age. Like there's so many things that it's so sad to see people not able to be themselves because they're so afraid of seeming a certain way. And I mean, if identity is an illusion and gender is in everything, then how could it possibly be right or wrong based on the gender that you want to be with? It has nothing to do with morality. And I made a video about that. Morality and sexuality are completely unrelated. Morality is based on the decisions that you make and how they affect other people, if they bring out positivity or negativity, healing or pain. And that's what you have to be thinking about. Sometimes your decisions do hurt other people and they do hold them back. And, religious people say, well, being in a homosexual relationship is hurting the other person because you're sinning with them and then they're going to go to hell and be punished for eternity. First of all, that's your belief. That's not a fact. That's not an objective fact. And I would like you to provide me with proof that your belief is true. And I've asked a lot of people for this proof. I've never gotten it. It doesn't exist. There is no proof of it because there's actually quite a lot of proof of the opposite, that there is not a place to be sent to be punished for eternity, because that's just not how life works. That's not reality. You don't go to hell and stay there and be punished for the decisions you made when you were alive forever. Life is about evolution and continuously making new decisions and going forward. And you can either be going forward or getting stuck and, you know, preventing yourself from evolving. And that's what a lot of people do out of fear and laziness and just, I don't want to do the work. I don't want to go forward. And that's hell. You know, that's hell in their own life. I can't imagine a pain worse than that. And if there's anything that we can learn from life, it's that you can be getting beaten to death and still be the happiest person in the world. And you can be completely safe in a house, in a pool, with a lot of money and be the most miserable person in the world. Outside stuff like that does not affect you. It's your own personal internal hell. That's all that it is. And that carries into the afterlife too, because we're just energy, and without the physical body, nothing's going to change. So when you die, you're either going to stay stuck just like you were on Earth, and you can choose to ascend and let go of all the things that are weighing you down, that you're holding on to, all the fear, all just fear, and everything that's coming with it. Gotta go back to work. Okay. I'll talk to you when you're done. Or you can text me because I don't know when you're going to be done. But
Sorry. Had to crack my ankle.
it's okay.
It had to be done.
Yeah. So you just have to let go of all these ideas because they're so unhealthy and they hold you back, and you're creating your own personal hell. The hell that you're so afraid of, you're already there. And you know,
Confirmed. Earlier this afternoon.
no, now you have to explain that.
Yeah, my dad told me that I'm in hell today because he had a nightmare that he was in hell. And then he kept making terrible jokes and puns about it. It's like it was a hell of a place. Stupid, stupid jokes. So I said, I feel like I'm in hell right now. And he said, you are, and walked away. So, yeah, it's real. It's here. I'm stuck in it. Help me. Get me out of here.
Well, I don't know. It was so scary, though. I don't even remember what it looked like because it was so scary. I met the devil, and I thought it was real when I woke up.
This was years ago when he was on some kind of drug because he had a surgery, and he woke up and the doctor was like, "That's normal. You're supposed to be having weird dreams." I don't know why he brought it up today. I don't remember what we were talking about that reminded him of it, but this wasn't a recent thing, but it did happen this morning. I mean, he talked about it this morning.
Yep. Yes. Made a lot of sense. Then everything fell into place for my life. That's what's going on.
I also just want to clarify, when I say that I haven't seen any proof, there are a lot of people who think that they have proof of their religion, but I talked about this in a couple of my other videos where you're really just jumping to conclusions. You may think that what you've seen or experienced, or that it's like if you read an article and just because there's bits of truth in it doesn't mean that all of it is true. You know, like you can't believe everything you read. You have to have your own discernment. You can't believe everything you hear from other people. You should have a filter with your own intuition and your own gut, and learn to trust your own gut. And you can't do that if you're constantly fearing the things that you're told by other people. Like if you're, like with me, for example, if I'm always thinking about if I'm, acting the right way or, doing the right thing, I'm not really able to listen to my higher mind and my intuition because I'm just busy fearing if I'm doing the right thing and if I'm being okay, which is so restrictive and
right according to
like
you,
having a pillow
right?
suffocating
You're
you.
right. That guy's right. This person's right. Their idea of it is different than
As I said,
yours.
Rights are also imaginary. It's just an idea that we made up. George Carlin said it's a cute idea, but it's made up. We made them up. And he goes, if you think you do have rights, where do they come from? People say, oh, they're God-given rights. And he's like, oh, here we go again with this stuff. But
that leads you back to your intuition.
It's like, where
do
you think your rights
just know.
are coming from? Are they God-given rights? But if the thing is that rights are not, okay, you have the right to choose between love and fear. That's it. That's your only right. And that will never be taken from you. That's what makes it a right. But as for, countries and laws and things like that, things that are technically considered rights by legal standards, those aren't rights, they're privileges, and they're temporary. They're not rights because they're not permanent. They can be changed, they can be taken away. You can have a right one day, and the next day somebody accuses you of something you never did, but you have to go in and, be questioned. And you could even get arrested and tried as guilty for something that you never did. Just live a perfectly innocent life, just in your house. All of a sudden, somebody sets you up to make it look like you did something. They do a really good job of it. And suddenly, all your rights disappear. What is that? Those are not rights, and they were never rights. Temporary privileges. So, yeah, we really have to let go of these really toxic ideas. And I hear a lot of people saying when it comes to toxic masculinity, people like to say, they like to bring in statistics. This is another thing I notice. A lot of people on like conservative sides and mentalities, Republicans, they like to use numbers and say, well, did you know this many people died of this and this and that? And it's usually, it's just a bunch of shit. Some of their statistics, it's like the sites that they link you to prove it are not trustworthy, and it's just all bullshit anyway. But sometimes it is accurate, and they're just using it in the wrong way and trying to make a point, but they don't even know what their ultimate point is. Like, what do you? The real question should be, what should I do about this? How does this affect me in my daily life, and how am I supposed to live based on this information? And then they give you this information, and I'm like, this doesn't change anything, even if this is true, which I don't think it is. Sometimes it is, and it still doesn't change the thing, because the reality of it is, you're not supposed to feed toxic masculinity, even if there are numbers and statistics that say we need more masculine people to raise a child or something, that a child being brought up needs a mother and a father, and then you look at statistics to show why this is. There are so many reasons why that is not an excuse to feed toxic masculinity. And toxic masculinity is basically just made up ideas that prevent us from being whole and from being authentic. So why would you want to feed that? The last thing I have written under chapter 3 is that you are safe, but justice isn't. And it's up to you to fight for it. You really have to stop feeling like you're not safe, or like you have to protect yourself. And think more about what justice actually is. When you see an injustice, you feel it in your entire being. There's not a part of you that thinks this is right. And if you can actually stop and ask yourself, is this actually justice or not? You know the answer. You shouldn't have to ask yourself. When it's truly injustice and you're looking at it, there will not be a question in your mind. And we really need to be more aware of that, because people are too uncertain about it. And then there's the people who don't even ask. We just go right forward and we're like, no, I'm fighting for this because this is right and this is what I believe in, and I'm tired of seeing all these people, all these liberals and, people trying to demasculate the population and make everything a certain way, and
making soft men.
Yeah.
It's
like,
sorry
so many
guys,
people
the harder you are on the outside, the smushier you are on the inside. You're always compensating.
And that's the thing, like I said, the more power you have is really just saying that you're afraid of others' power. You're afraid that you need to, it's compensation. It really is, it's compensation.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You're not authentic. Look at someone who's genuinely unbothered, just truly at peace, in and out, and they have a big friend circle, they're healthy friendships, they're encouraging, they're positive, and when you interact with them, you feel heard and understood, and you're like, wow, I love you. Like, how are you just so authentic? I want to be like you. I want to have you in my life. That is the type of person that you want to be looking up to. And that is not the type of person who will have a bunch of people working under them and having control over them, because that is coming from a place of fear, and like you're insufficient.
Yeah, right. And it's okay to feel like you're soft or squishy on the inside. That's normal. That's being human.
You are on the outside too. I hate to break it to you, but you can bleed.
Own your feelings.
Your skin is soft. Knives can cut you. I don't care how buff you are. I don't care how many thick muscles you have.
The more
knives can kill you.
The more he feels he has to protect. And if he would just accept that about himself, that would be the ultimate strength, is to own that, yes, I have feelings, and these are my feelings, and I like to be treated gently in certain ways because I'm human. And that shows such more strength than saying, and beat you up and get big muscles and
I can
stay away
imagine
from me.
feeling the need to beat somebody up. Honestly, I think the best mentality is to let people know that they can't mess with you. Let people know that if they try, you'll get them. And, the best way to do it, I think, is to just catch them off guard. Do it quickly. Just, if somebody lets you know that they have an agenda against you, catch them off guard and do it in front of people. Make sure it's known that this kind of behavior is not going to be tolerated and that you can protect yourself, and then move on from it. No extra unnecessary violence or aggression. Just make it clear that if somebody tries to get you, you're not going to have any of it, and then go on with your life. And then people will respect you for that, and you won't have to worry about people bullying you or attacking you, and you don't have to feel like a victim. You can protect yourself, and we need to be teaching kids self-defense instead of change yourself to not be bullied. Dress like a nun to not get raped. Like, this is ridiculous. We need to stop this because it's so lazy. It's like, well, it's too hard to teach boys not to be animals, and it's too hard to teach bullies how wrong it is. I mean, it's really not that hard. Like, you could psychoanalyze a bully just by sitting with them and talking to them and asking them questions. And you don't always have to think of them as a monster or an idiot, but we are so judgmental of one another. We don't think of other people as people when they do something that we deem bad. If we decide that what they did is, like, we have this idea of right and wrong, good and bad, and if somebody does something that we've decided is bad, we think of them as if they're not even human anymore, and we don't treat them with any respect, and we lose that unconditional love that we're supposed to have for everyone. And like I said, there is a time and a place to set boundaries. This doesn't mean letting somebody walk all over you. Unconditional love doesn't mean you're not holding people accountable for their behavior. You can absolutely set boundaries and hold people accountable and make sure that everyone is taking responsibility for their behavior. But you have to take responsibility for yours. And when you're coming from a place of negativity and you're holding on to hate, that's going to hold you back. That hurts you to hold hate in your heart and unforgiveness and bitterness. That's holding you back, and that is giving that person power. Like they say, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. That's so true, because when you hate someone, you're giving them attention. You're allowing them to take up space in your mind and your body and your energy field, and you need to get them out of there. Say, I forgive you, and I'm giving you to the universe now. You can no longer bring pain here. And then just close your eyes and imagine yourself saying this to them, and then just push them away.
Get back on your path.
Imagine a kind of a healing light coming out of your hands, and imagine that you're now sending them off to be taken care of by a higher power, and it's not your responsibility to worry about them. You don't have to worry about if they're hurting other people, if they're doing other things. They're now not your responsibility, and they can no longer bring pain to you, and you're letting them go. That's forgiveness. That's why it doesn't need to involve the other person. People think if you're going to forgive someone, you have to go up to them and you have to forgive them and it has to go a certain way. That's not right. That's not forgiveness.
Taking it personally.
It doesn't have to go any certain way.
If a bee stings you, do you take it personally? No, it's just in the bee's nature to do that. And yes, it hurts, but you don't go home and say, it was my fault. I deserved it. I should not go outside anymore. That's not going to help, because you just accept it. And I mean, bullies are just people that are so afraid. They've probably likely been bullied themselves, and you can have compassion for them.
Bullies are often victims of toxic masculinity.
Keeping yourself
Bullies are
safe
people who feel that they need so much to compensate for all the things that they're not getting. They're like, I just feel like I have to act this way, I have to be this way, and I want to be liked. It's coming from a place of survival. They want to be liked, they want to fit in, and sometimes they don't think that. Sometimes they don't want to be liked, and they want to stand off and be, an outsider, and they only end up attracting other people like that. But everybody, on some level, doesn't want to be alone.
It's a survival tactic.
So either way, it's still coming from a place of trying to fit in and survive.
Right.
And if you truly did not need other people, if you truly felt that you were independent, then you wouldn't be a bully, and you wouldn't be
never.
You'd just be minding your own business, and you'd be asking yourself, I've taken care of myself. I know exactly who I am, and there's nothing left to do but focus on how I can teach what I've learned and heal as I've been healed. And what else is there after that? Once you're okay, what are you going to keep trying to take care of yourself? You're already taken care of. What else is there to do except take care of others?
Their needs,
But you have
it's
to know
almost
how
like
to do
starving,
that.
starving people. You're not surprised when a starving person sees that you have a basket of food and takes food from you. It makes sense. They're
Mhm.
starving. They're starving for love. They're starving for
But you can't feed them
affection.
because it's not healthy. It's like if you give a homeless person $100, they could go spend it on beer and drugs and then just still be homeless, and it wouldn't have made a difference. Like it's better to maybe try and mentor them and teach them how to be successful instead of just giving them what they ask for. And that's the perfect metaphor for how to help people in general. We think, well, if giving them money doesn't help them, then you shouldn't help them. But we don't think, well, if this method of helping them doesn't work, let's try another method. And that's always what you have to be asking. And sometimes the best answer is to just leave them alone to figure it out themselves. Teach them to walk by not being an assistant, unless they're paying you, in which case it's showing that they actually are interested in doing the work and they value it enough to pay for it. But if they don't value it enough to pay for it, then maybe they're not interested in actually doing the work. So you'd be wasting your time in helping them. It would be taking up your time and energy that you could be spending helping people who genuinely want your help and know what to do with it. And instead, you're spending all your time helping people who don't even really know how to take your help.
And there's programs, I mean, because they're homeless people in that
I mean, I'm not even
scenario,
talking about
but
that. Like, I just mean in general. Like, you have to know people like to draw conclusions really quickly, and it's usually based on what they personally want, whatever's easier, and it's not based on
well,
authenticity.
yeah, their first thought is, I gotta survive, I gotta survive, I gotta survive.
Yeah. People tend to think it's either help the person or don't help the person, but it's always help the person. And if it's a matter of how you're helping them, sometimes, like I said, the best thing you can do for someone is say, you know what, you have money and you don't care to spend it on learning this, which means you don't value it enough, which means if I spend the time trying to teach you, you're not going to be using the information because you feel entitled, and that's already a setback. So come to me when you truly understand the value of the work, and then we'll do it together. And until then, I'm going to be helping people who already understand it. And that is how to come from a place of unconditional love. That is help.
Right, and by there you're protecting yourself.
Exactly.
And not just letting all the stray cats in your house.
Mm-hmm. It's that
As
simple.
much as you want to, as much as I would love to do that.
And there is a time, and I'm not saying you should never give other people help or money unless they pay you. I'm saying there's a time and a place for it, and you really have to listen to your intuition. Like, I had to give like $15 to a friend before because they were homeless and they needed to move into a different. They needed an Uber to go to their friend's house. Otherwise, they would have just been out in the cold. And I say they because I'm referring to two people. And it was her and her boyfriend, and they were just going to be homeless. And then there was like a big snowstorm where they were, so they could have died if I didn't help them get to their friend's house. So that was a situation where you need to give somebody money.
And that's not something that this person does all the time.
Exactly. No,
It's
like
not
they
taking
didn't even
advantage
really
of
ask.
you.
I had to offer, I think. But it was like, how do you even? I don't remember if they asked. They might have asked, but it doesn't matter because, that's like a dire situation, and that's okay. Sometimes it is okay to just help someone without expecting anything in return.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really the only time you should help someone, because if you're only helping because you want something in return, that's not authentic. I mean, that should be enough in and of itself to know that you made somebody's life a little easier. You assisted them. I mean, why does that not make you feel good? But I told my aunt about that, and the first thing she thought was, oh, well, I hope you made the right decision. It's like risky to give friends money. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And that's because we have, my grandpa is always like giving his friends money and well, I don't know if he does this as often anymore, but he used to be really generous with his money, with his friends, in an unhealthy way that was more enabling them than genuinely helping them. And she knew about that and was like hoping that I didn't kind of go down that road. So that was the only reason she said anything to me about it. But I was like, no, I'm fully aware of boundaries and enabling and all of that kind of stuff. But there's a time and a place to do certain things. So life isn't as simple as there's rules of this is right and wrong. Love and fear is all that there really is. So you just have to learn to look inward and tell which one you're coming from at any given time. That's really the only advice I could give you. And also, let go of control, replace it with an attitude of gratitude. That's the best advice I can give you. the patriarchy is a bad thing. That's an objective fact. Toxic masculinity does not mean that masculinity is toxic. It means that toxic masculinity is toxic for everyone involved and prevents men from being themselves and prevents women from just being authentic around men because they're always afraid that they're going to get attacked by men who think they need to act like animals or who think that that's all that they can act like. Like they, you know, it's laziness. It really is this idea of, well, I'm just an animal. I don't have any self-control. I can't help it. I don't know. It's poor me. And you know, a lot of people like to talk. They use this excuse: reverse racism, heterophobia. These are not things. There's no such thing as discrimination against majorities because minorities are discriminated against for a reason. And if you are going to sit there as someone who's not part of a minority and act like you're facing discrimination, you need to seriously check yourself and realize how little you really have to complain about. Be an ally instead of another part of the problem, just complaining and making people feel like they need to explain something to you. Just work with it. You know, understand the oppression that minorities are facing and work to fight against it with them instead of being part of the problem and saying, well, I'm facing discrimination too. That's why it's wrong. Because do you hear how that sounds? You sound like a whiny little baby. You're not facing any discrimination. Maybe some people are saying that white people suck or, you know, making jokes about heterosexuality in a way that may seem like offensive, but you really should not be taking offense to this because you have not been discriminated against. The reason that it's problematic to make racist jokes or jokes against people that are part of the LGBTQ community is because they've constantly had to deal with feeling like they don't belong in the world. There's something inherently wrong with them, and you know, it's because of all this stuff that they hear about gay people growing up. They see, you know, extremely offensive stereotypes portrayed on TV. We hear people talk about it and think like look at this, and you know, you don't want to be like that, and then you're like, well, it's a good thing I'm not like that. And then one day you start to wonder, what if I am? And then you have to deal with, you know, coming to terms with that and thinking about, what does this mean? Are people going to look at you differently? Are people going to judge you? Are you going to feel like maybe there is something wrong with you? All these thoughts that make it so hard just for you to come to terms with it. And on top of that, you have to deal with the other side saying, well, I'm facing discrimination too. No, you're not. You never had to go through that. You never had to deal with wondering if there's something wrong with you. If you're white and you're male and you're heterosexual and cisgender, you are privileged. That's just a reality.
You're not under threat.
You haven't dealt with all the things that other minorities
for some reason feel that you
have come up and dealt with in their childhood, in their life, and then not even to mention the discrimination. And like, this is just coming to terms with it. I'm talking about, like, I haven't even started talking about the discrimination that people face when they deal with, you know, racism and, you know, having your neck stepped on, you can't breathe, and having people deny a wedding cake for you because, you know, how dare you be interested in someone of your own sex? Like, you know, and then being beat up and murdered and killed in other countries where it's actually legal to kill people for it because it's a crime. Like, this is a serious, serious issue. And how dare you not fight for it and instead just sit and act like you're a victim somehow? That's disgusting. Grow up. You're not a 5-year-old. Stop acting like it. This is the problem with maturity. People are so whiny and immature that they just refuse to do the work. And they refuse, I mean, like, honestly, minorities are so strong for dealing with everything that they deal with that they kind of have to be unbothered and more resilient. And you should respect them for that. Because even though you may think that being feminine means you're weak, women and other minorities are usually a lot stronger because of the extra shit that they have to deal with and carry on their back. And men are often pussies, even though they act like they're so strong and they're so masculine. The most outwardly masculine ones are usually the most fearful on the inside and have done the least amount of work, and they're lazy and they don't care about other people. And that's just reality.
Maturation is a luxury. You don't just get it with age.
Yeah, you have to work toward it. You have to earn it. You have
to do the work.
Yeah, you can't just mature by being 30. You have to actually work through it and become a 30-year-old mentally. I had a lot of things happen to me in my childhood where I was forced to mature faster. I had to go live with a parent who I didn't feel knew how to take care of me. So I had to take care of myself when I was there. And I was also here but I wasn't here all the time. And for the times that I wasn't here, whether I was at school or I was with my dad, I didn't feel fully safe and taken care of. So I had to step into that role by myself. And there are so many people who go through that on such, even worse circumstances where they really are like in danger. They could get beaten and killed, so many terrible situations. And these
Their
are the
survival
strongest
really,
people.
Is it stake? Honestly.
And they don't even have to be a minority. I mean, there are people who go through abuse just because they live with abusive people. But the reality of it is that whether you're a minority or not, you're a human. And we live in a society that denies what it means to be human. And we try to control people, and then everybody loses in this situation because you can't even just be, whether you're, even if you are a cisgender, heterosexual, cisgender just means not transgender, straight man, white man, you are still a victim of this because you aren't able to just be your authentic self. And that's, you're holding back on your own prosperity, your own maturation. You're losing so much, and you're fighting against yourself, and it's just really sad to see this. So we need to make this change wherever we can, and then hopefully it'll become a worldwide change eventually. But honestly, I don't think we're going to be here much longer if we don't make these changes. Because not doing this is not an option. We need to fix these problems. We need to make these changes. And if we continue to not do it, we're not going to be here much longer. Like if you could ask me, what is the future going to look like in 100 years? Well, it's going to have to look a certain way. Otherwise, there's not going to be a future. And that's an unfortunate thing to hear. But climate change is very real. And so is the way that we destroy each other, all the wars we have. Honestly, somebody made a comment on my video about pro-life and gave me some statistics and numbers about how many babies are killed. And I said, well, if you want to use statistics and numbers, I'm going to tell you that there are, it's only 10 in the morning, and the worldwide population has already gone up by 100,000. 3 babies are born every second, and only 1 person dies every second, which means every second, the worldwide population goes up by 2. A couple of years ago, it was like 7.5 billion. We're almost at 8 billion people now. And you're worried about the deaths of babies that haven't been born yet? Jesus, I mean, where are your priorities? And then they replied, well, can we just ignore this terrible injustice? No. And I was like, there are bigger injustices to be fighting. Like, if you even want to call that an injustice, I'm like humoring this person's mentality. I'm not pro-life, but even if you are, there are definitely things you should be prioritizing. How about you go and spend time at a homeless shelter, or maybe adopt a kid instead of standing outside an abortion clinic and preaching how it's a sin. Make a better use of your time. I mean, I don't care what you believe in.
Start
Just
by watching
get your priorities in order.
Idiocracy. See what the future could look like.
Yeah, but
unfortunately,
luckily that won't ever happen because we will all kill each other before then. That's
ease
another
up
thing that
on
I said.
having so many children.
I said we're more likely, I was like, we're not going to go extinct from people having abortions. We're more likely to go extinct because of little arguments like this turning into gigantic wars that are fought with nuclear weapons and everybody just dies. And that is a very real possibility. And I don't know if climate change is going to get to us before that, but if we don't turn this around and start being more mindful, we're headed toward extinction. And I honestly am okay with that if that happens, because if it happens, then it was necessary. And if it doesn't happen, then it wasn't necessary. So whatever happens, it is what it is. But I know what I'm going to fight for until there's nothing left to fight for. So I'm doing this, and I've got a lot more in store.
Balance is the most important thing.
Balance, yeah. Balancing between light and dark, 2 opposites. That was kind of my thing. That's like what I always represented. I learned that about myself when I meditated on trying to figure out who I am apart from being human. It wasn't like who I was in past lives. It was just who I actually am at my core without the human shell. And I learned that I represented balancing between 2 opposites.
The answer
and I could
to
hold
everything
them both at the same time.
Is its opposite.
Yeah, you said that once, and I was
Yeah.
like, what does that mean? And then I was like, maybe it's somehow true.
I thought it sounded profound, but then I thought about it, and I was like, no, that does make sense.
Yeah, the
If you're
answer
too
to
cold,
everything is its opposite.
You get a warm blanket.
Maybe not everything, every question,
the answer
but pretty
to
much.
a man is a woman. You combine them, and you have a life. You aren't
Sure.
supposed to go at each other.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
that's
Well,
nature.
this is about to be an hour long, so
So,
I'm gonna end it before that happens.
Bye.
Yeah, goodbye. Hopefully I'll see you next week. I'm doing a video with a guest next week. Not her.
Not me.
It's gonna be on Zoom.
A better guest.
No. Well, yeah, but I don't know.